So in verse 17, Cain was intimate with his wife, or gave birth to Enoch, and then they went and built this city. Where did his wife come from? If Adam was created in the likeness of God, and then Seth was created in the likeness of Adam, does that mean that Seth doesn't have the likeness of God? I want to bring up another question that you probably don't want to answer, but did people really live 910 years old? How would you tell them to preach this to their congregation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So,
Welcome back to Open Scripture, where we seek to sharpen the way the church reads her foundational texts. My name is Nick Nail. With me is Dr. Tracy McKenzie. And our last episode, we were in chapter 4 of Genesis, where we read about Cain and Abel and that whole tragic story where Cain is birthed to Eve, but he's not listed as a son. And so he is a son, but he's not listed as a son in the context of the future seed of Adam and the seed of woman. But then we eventually learn about Seth, who does come and is the actual listed son of Eve and Adam.
Son and seed.
And seed, yeah, because Cain killed his brother Abel. And so then that led to a whole bunch of sin, and he was kicked further and further out of God's presence. So there's some bleakness happening, but then we get a message of hope with Seth coming onto the scene, where Seth is this son of Adam, and then he gives birth to someone named Enosh, and then people start calling on the Lord again. They start worshiping God again through this son. And one just interesting little piece that I briefly asked about and we didn't answer, so I want to bring it back up because people are gonna think, what is happening here? We believe that this is true, accurate history. That these stories are not just myths.
That's right.
That this does tell us our human origins, but there's a really interesting question of where did all these people come from? So in verse 17, Cain was intimate with his wife, and she bore a son, or gave birth to Enoch, and then they went and built this city. Where did his wife come from? Where are there other people happening here? Because so far we only have Adam and Eve, we have Cain and Abel, and there's no one really else mentioned. So there's a lot of assumptions, or at least questions to ask. And again, maybe there's not much time that needs to be concerned over this, but it is a question.
Yeah, and I think it's a question, and I think really it shows the purpose of the author and how the author works. Keep in mind that the author is at the end of this book, right? We would say all the way over at the end of Deuteronomy. And he is fashioning this book. And like you said, these are historical texts that the author picked up from his time period, things that either had been passed down to him orally or, again, were texts. And now he's shaping them to talk about the future. So he's not concerned about where Cain gets his wife, right? And again, from his perspective, of course, there's lots of people all around. So we see the selection here of the author in his selection of these historical texts. Now, a lot of people use this to say, Adam and Eve weren't the first human beings or Homo sapiens, right? We weren't the only ones, right? But there were others around and so on and so forth. All of that would lie outside of the purpose of the author. You can kind of say what you want to about that, but that's not really where the author is going. And he's selecting these texts, again, to fashion a particular story. Now, I also want to say, how are we adjudicating the author's attention? Again, these are just little interpretive helps here. we saw wordplay, right? We saw these word plays with each of these names, with Cain, with Abel, with Seth, and with Enosh. I suppose Abel wasn't really a word play, but Cain, Seth, and Enosh, a word play was involved that indicated importance to the author. So this is why we're making a big deal out of this, is because the author, again, kind of focused his attention there. We also saw repetition, this to call a name. This is going to be important. The word seed, that's important because, again, we have this pronouncement in Genesis 3 about the seed of the woman. Now we know that Seth is the seed, again, through whom that blessing or that pronouncement is eventually going to come. So in some ways, I didn't answer your question.
Yeah, that's not a sufficient answer for most modern day thinkers.
Yeah.
Because I think we want apologetics. We want the answer. We want to be able to prove such and such.
Right. Right.
And sometimes God just leaves things a little vague.
Yeah, and that's where I would say, we need to bend our expectations to what the text gives us, rather than to bend the text to our expectations. Not that it's wrong to ask those questions, and again, these are apologetic questions, and they have value. But as someone who's trying to explain the text, we just have to say the answer's not there.
Yeah,
and we don't know it. Now we're really starting here then in chapter 5. Chapter 5, we're going to see another genealogy. And this is a long genealogy. This is where, again, if you start your reading plan on January 1st, by January 5th, you're ready to give up that reading plan because of Genesis 5 here. But it's going to be very simple. We also saw in Genesis 4, there was a very short genealogy. So we already know how genealogies kind of work. But this one's going to be very simple. So in this episode, we need to spend some time on verses 1 and 2 of chapter 5. Then we're going to spend some time on where the genealogy breaks. The first break, guess which generation it breaks on? The pattern of the genealogy breaks.
The first one?
No. The
seventh
one. Seventh one. And then it's going to break again at 10th. And these are going to be so important, again, as a means to keep our eye on the breadcrumbs that the author is leaving for us to follow. Just back to the interpretive helps here for a second. In reality, you get a text like this, and you can make the text say almost anything you want to. You could take a word, especially out of the English Bibles, and you could take that word and you could build an entire sermon or entire explanation out of a particular word. Yeah. But how do you know that the author wants to focus on that word or is making a big deal out of it? That's one of the things we're trying to unpack here. Why is our explanation maybe more intuitive or innate, if you will, or exegesis, that is emerging out of the text, than, say, someone else's? We're not trying to be polemical here. I'm just saying that interpretation matters.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. 5, 1, and 2.
All right. Chapter 5, verse 1. This is the document containing the family records of Adam. On the day that he created man, he made him in the likeness of God.
All right. So let's pull your ESV up here. Yeah. This is the document.
Yeah, that's a little odd.
That's pretty odd.
So CSB, not.
All right. Let's just do a little something here real quick. Yeah. How does the CSB interpret chapter 2, verse 4?
2 verse 4. Okay. It says, these are the records.
Okay.
Of the heavens and the earth.
So these are the records is the same word as, it's going to be the same words as in 5:1. It is slightly different. And maybe I jumped to conclusion. Maybe it's okay. Read me CSB 5:1 here again.
5:1. This is the document containing the family records.
Okay, so at least it uses the words records there.
Yeah, but it says document. And then ESV says, this is the book of the generations of Adam.
Okay. All right.
Is that more accurate?
Yeah. Now, what I'd like you to do is read 5:1 again
Of
in
ESV.
ESV.
Okay.
And let's cut out the whole discussion that we just had.
Okay. This is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God.
All right, very good. So here we have a bit of a return to chapter 1. I shouldn't even say it's a bit of a return. This is a total return to chapter 1. This is very similar to Genesis 2:4, which said these are the generations of the heavens and the earth.
Right.
Here we have, this is the book of the generations of Adam.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about this, go ahead and read verse 2, and I'll make my point here.
Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them and named them man when they were created.
All right. I think you have 17 words here in Hebrew, if I remember correctly, and all but 4 of them are from Genesis 1, or it might have been 20 or so words. We have, this is the book of generations, so that's not in Genesis 1, and he called their name is not in Genesis 1. All of the rest of these are Genesis 1 words.
Mm-hmm.
So if you remember Genesis 2:4, I think we called that a piece of tape or maybe verbal Velcro.
Yeah.
This is the same thing.
Okay.
We have a piece of tape here that's taping this genealogy onto the story of Cain and Abel, Genesis 4 here. And the important thing is that he called their name. Remember, I focused on that in chapter 4, verses 25 and 26. And here we see he called their name right here in 5:1. Moreover, this is on the day he created Adam in the likeness of God. He made him, and he blessed him, and he called their name. So here, Adam is basically a son of God, right? Because of this, he called their name.
Yeah.
And again, here it's just referring back, and he blessed them, right? This idea of being fruitful. So here, Adam is, without using the word son, this is basically the author saying Adam was a son of God because he made him in the image and the likeness of it. All right, so we have a couple things there just to summarize. First of all, this is a piece of tape connecting these things. And then there's the importance of Adam or Adam being made in the likeness of God. He called their name Adam, and he basically was a son of God. Now, look at verse 3.
Verse 3, when Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness, after his image, and named him Seth.
All right, so this is kind of interesting here because there's no word son here.
What does it say?
It says, and he birthed in his likeness according to his image, and he called his name Seth. It'd be interesting to see if the CSB has the word son here. And the idea here is there's no word son because, again, there's meant to be a parallel between Seth, between Adam birthing Seth, and God birthing or creating Adam.
Right. CSB also says he fathered a son in his likeness.
Okay, so there's just the word to birth or to father. There's no word son here. And again, I'm not picking on the translation. I'm just saying that the author left out the word because he wants to draw a parallel between, again, Adam being created in the likeness of God and named Adam, and Seth being birthed in the likeness of Adam and being named Seth. Now, if you think about this, we're going to basically say here that Adam was a son of God, Seth was a son of Adam, Enosh was a son of Seth, and we're going to kind of keep going down the line here until we get to Noah is going to be a son. This is going to be important in the genealogy. Abraham, Noah's going to have a son who is going to eventually end up in Abraham being a son. and then Isaac, Jacob, Judah is going to be a son. And then we move on through the Old Testament. Eventually, David is a son.
Yeah.
David's going to have sons,
Mm-hmm.
and that ends up in being Jesus.
Right.
So that in Luke, I think it's Luke 3,
Mm-hmm.
Luke traces Jesus' genealogy back through Adam. Goes all the way back through the names I just listed,
Yeah.
and ends up saying Adam was a son of God. And this is how he does it right here, even though he doesn't explain it in that way. But this is basically how he's doing it through this Genesis 5, 1 through 3. You want to read that right there? Can you find it? I think it's towards the end of chapter 3.
For Luke.
For Luke, yeah.
Yeah. So just the last few verses. The son of Enoch, the son of Jared, the son of Mahalalel, the son of Canaan, the son of Enosh, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think some people would interpret this as, so the beginning of that genealogy says Jesus, when he began his ministry, was about 30 years. That the Son of God would be pointing back to Jesus at the beginning of the section. But what we're saying is this is actually just pointing back to the previous verse where it's referring to Adam.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is also referring to Jesus as the Son of God, but it's really pointing to Adam as the Son of God in this context of the genealogy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, now the other thing I want to say quickly about verse 3 here is that we begin the genealogy, right? Because it says Adam lived so many years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the genealogy is going to continue until the end of the flood story. Turn to 9:29, just 28 and 29 real quickly, because I want us to see this, because again, this is going to tell us how the author is working. We're trying to discern kind of intentionality here, and we need to see the author's method of making meaning, and this will help us kind of discern that.
Yes, so after the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
All right, so those words right there, he lived so many years after the flood, and then he died. Those are the exact words that we see in this genealogy coming up. So if you think about it, the flood story is spliced into this genealogy.
Yeah.
So this is pretty powerful, that the main literary unit that we're working with here is from chapter 5 all the way to chapter 9.
So we have this giant genealogy, and then author zooms in on the Noah flood part. And is that what you're saying?
Not quite. I kind of want to stay away from the idea of zoomed in.
Okay.
I want to use the idea of splicing or integrating.
Okay.
The author integrates the flood story into the genealogy, right? And I'm saying that because, of course, the genealogy begins here in chapter 5 and ends all the way in 9, so the flood story's inside of that.
Yeah.
The little narrative that we're going to come to with Noah being a gardener, right, and creating wine, basically, and getting drunk, that's also integrated into the story. So we're asking the question, why does the author integrate the flood story into the genealogy? So you can see here that the genealogy are the boundaries to this unit. It's almost like if the author was talking to us and we interrupted him mid-sentence to draw some point. That's basically what we'd be doing if we tried to stop and make application after the genealogy, or if we took the flood story out of its context, which happens, of course, all the time. But we took the flood story out of the context, we set it over here, and then we tried to make some point out of the flood story without considering the genealogy. We haven't got the full story from the author.
Yeah.
And so, again, this is one of those things. Now we have to ask, okay, why is the flood story integrated into the genealogy? What does it do? How does it help move the genealogy along? And what is the genealogy doing? And we'll see that.
Yeah.
We'll see part of that today.
Well, one question then, if Adam was created in the likeness of God, and then Seth was created in the likeness of Adam, does that mean that Seth doesn't have the likeness of God, or does he?
Well, I would say kind of just the opposite. He inherits that likeness from Adam.
But because Cain is left out of this conversation, that means that Seth is carrying it and not Cain.
I think, I don't personally draw that implication.
Okay.
But I think it is an implication that one could draw. And there is a reason why I don't draw that implication. It's going to come out at the end of the flood story, because the Canaanites, not to be confused with Cainites, in other words, the Canaanites, will still have the opportunity to receive the blessing of Abraham. So I'm not drawing that there are two kind of lineages here, one who does not have the image of God and one who does the image of God, although I think it's not, completely out of the realm of possibility because of what we're seeing here in verses 1 and 2.
Okay.
All right. So I think the larger point one could make here is that this genealogy is going to wind up with everyone dying except Noah and his family.
Right.
So in a sense, your question, doesn't matter because everybody's going to die except Noah and his.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So those are some good questions, and we'll continue to unpack those. Now, I think what I'm going to do is have you just read through the genealogy, and we're going all the way to verse 22 because that's when the pattern breaks. So, what I really want you to do is, you see if you can discern the pattern in the genealogy. This comes across in English, obviously. You can discern the pattern in the genealogy, and then when the pattern breaks, that's when you need to pay attention. All right, now go ahead and read it and get us going here.
Okay, so the days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. When Seth had lived 105 years, he fathered Enosh. Seth lived after he fathered Enosh 807 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died.
All right. I'm bored myself here, so I'm gonna interrupt you here and just say, okay, here's the pattern. So and so lived a number of years, and he bore so and so, and then that first so and so lived after he bore the next one so many years. He bore sons and daughters. All the days of so and so were so many years, and he died. Now, again, that's the pattern, and that pattern is going to be important. One, because we're going to break it, and then for another reason it's important is in chapter 6, the author's going to go off script and cause problems with the whole sons of God language.
Yep.
But if we stay tuned to the exact language, which we have here, that passage will not be a problem for us.
Okay.
All right? But there's the pattern. And like I said, the pattern breaks until verse 22. So why don't you pick it up in 21, and then we'll note here how it's broken in verse 22.
Okay, so by 21, we get to Enoch, who had lived 65 years. He fathered Methuselah. Enoch walked with God after he fathered Methuselah 300 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him.
All right. Now, again, if I would have let you read the entire genealogy, this would obviously be like, what in the world is going on here?
Yeah.
All of the other patriarchs that are mentioned here died. They all faced death. Enoch doesn't die. I mean, this is crazy. Moreover, 2 times it says he walks with God. The last people to walk with God were Adam and Eve. And really it says God, walked in the midst of the garden, right? To the spirit of the evening, or to the wind of the evening.
Right.
And so, here Enoch is actually portrayed in the same way that God was portrayed. And here Enoch walks with God. Now, again, I've had questions in class. Well, what does it mean to walk with God? It's like, well, I don't know. right? But it's positive because he didn't face the effects of death. So in a sense here, we could say, wow, it's possible not to die. But Enoch here is very unusual. And we should, again, take note of Enoch's name here. This is Chanok, and we'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay, so it just says that he was not. Is that what it says in Hebrew?
Yep.
So he was not.
He was
God
not,
took him.
and because God took him.
Yeah.
And so, again, I think the implication here is he wasn't anymore. He didn't face death because, again, that's how the pattern's broken in the rest of genealogy. And God, again, just came and got him, apparently, something to that effect. God took him, and he just kind of disappeared.
Okay.
Right? But I think that the nuance here is he didn't face death like the others did.
Right, of course.
And that's part of what walking with God means.
So you don't face death.
You don't face death. So again, if you think back to the fruit of man and woman's disobedience, right? They faced death. Cain murdered Abel, right? He was kicked out of the garden. So here Enoch, in a sense, gives us just a glimpse into Enoch, who was the seventh. Remember who was the seventh in chapter 4? Lamech the terrible, right? Who murdered. So here we have this, again, contrast between Enoch, who walked with God, didn't face death, and Lamech, who literally caused death, and of course, died himself. So the pattern in the genealogy picks up almost as quickly as it disappeared there. So let's pick it up right here in verse
25.
25.
When Methuselah had lived 187 years, he fathered Lamech. Methuselah lived after he fathered Lamech 782 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah, saying, Out of the ground the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. Lamech lived after he fathered Noah 595 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. After Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
All right, very good. So we made it through the rest of the genealogy. You saw the pattern pick up right away, but notice that the pattern is broken, this time at the 10th in the genealogy. And again, we're tracing here how the author is working. And in the next genealogy, which comes along in chapter 11, guess who the 10th in the genealogy is? Abraham. Abraham is the 10th. So again, we've got sevens that the author seems to be focusing on, and now we're going to have tens. And again, the reason why we're saying this is so obvious is because the pattern breaks. So again, this is not really controversial. The pattern breaks here. We go from a genealogy where there was one named person. It's called a linear genealogy because you're going from one person to the next person to the next person, even though he's having sons and daughters, right? There's only one person that's mentioned. But now Noah, he bears 3 sons. And we could say the rest of the Bible is about these 3 sons.
Right.
By the way, a little bit ago, when we said Cain was kicked out of the presence of the Lord, we could say at that point, the rest of the Bible is about getting back into the presence of the Lord.
Yeah.
So I was going to make that comment a little bit ago, but here we're focusing on these 3 sons.
I want to bring up another question that you probably don't want to answer, but I think, again, our current readers and listeners are going to be thinking, did people really live 910 years old? What do we do with that?
Great question. Great question. This is where I would bring in the notion of genre. I think we've talked about genre before. Genre is just kind of a literary category that an author imbibes or inherits from his culture. So again, to no surprise, the author is working with texts that were in his culture. And we actually know from the ancient Near East, we have these king lists. right? These are king lists, extra biblical literature
Yeah.
that list these kings. And these kings lived an extraordinarily long amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So my own personal take on this is genre.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these are these very important figures, and they're given a certain amount of prominence and importance because of how long they lived.
Mm.
And so I personally would prefer to see this through genre rather than mandating or requiring that it be a certain number of years.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that as well. I just think genre explains it a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then we don't have to come up with these kind of strange theories about, the DNA was, pure or hadn't been corrupted at that point, or these other strange things to explain that. That's my own personal take.
Yeah. I mean, it's helpful when we're like, we're just wondering what these words have to say.
Right.
We're not trying to answer some questions in light of our modern understanding of biology and anthropology and all that.
Right. And I just think from an apologetic standpoint, the notion of genre is better than the other possibilities.
Again, it's maybe not the satisfying answer that people want,
Right.
but I think it does answer it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this is going to be very important. I want to go back to where the pattern breaks with Noah, because I want you to see what is going to go on here. And I guess this would break at verse 28.
When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah.
All right. So notice what happens here. He fathers a son. Nobody else in the genealogy had fathered a son.
Right. Son.
It literally said the other fathers, just the patriarchs, bore Methuselah or bore Enoch or any of these types of words. Let's find one of these. For example, verse 25. Just read your verse 25. And
when Methuselah had lived 187 years, he fathered Lamech.
All right, there you go. So he fathered, he bore, he birthed Lamech, or he fathered Lamech. Same exact word.
But for 28, the word son is actually there.
Exactly.
He fathered
a son. So again, we're keeping our eye on this issue of fathering a son, because Seth was a son, Cain was not a son.
Right.
Seth was a seed, Cain was not a seed, apparently. Enosh was a son, Adam was a son.
Yep.
And all of these can be traced back to that. Moreover, look at this. He called his name. So here we have that same idea here. I guess this is in verse 29 here. He called his name Noah.
What does Noah mean?
So Noah is, we're gonna get into this. This is actually going to be a word play. It's a very important word play here. And the word is going to play, first of all, it's the opposite of Enoch's name. So Enoch is Chanok. Noah is Noach. So you can kind of hear the opposite there.
Yeah.
And this is going to become important. I'll just go ahead and give it away too. The word for grace in chapter 6, verse 8, is the exact flipping of Noah's letters. It's the word chen, and Noah is Noach.
Okay.
So again, this is all a word play where Noah means grace, or Noah finds grace, and it's related to Enoch's name, and it's going to be related to a verb here in 29, which we'll get to here in just a second. But again, this draws basically importance to this naming of Noah. It's in line with the naming of Adam and the naming of Seth and the naming of Enosh.
Wow.
So Noah is right in that line. He's the next important son, if you will, from Adam to Seth to Enosh to Noah. Okay? Now look at what Noah's name does here. Look at what it means. I'll let you read.
Saying, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief.
All right. Let's try a different version. Try ESV. That's correct.
That's ESV.
Oh, that's okay. Let's try the
CSB.
CSB. That's correct. It's just kind of out of the Hebrew order.
Okay. This is 29.
Yep.
And he named him Noah, saying, This one will bring us relief from the agonizing labor of our hands, caused by the ground the Lord had cursed.
All right, so that one to me has a better order. I'll read the Hebrew here. This one will bring us comfort from our work and from the pain of our hands, from the ground which the Lord cursed it.
Comfort, that's kind of different than relief.
Yeah,
in a
so
way.
this is the word nacham.
Another wordplay.
Another part of the wordplay. So there's 4 words involved in this wordplay. And again, we've already seen how the author plays with these names, right? We really saw it with the word Adam and Adamah. We saw it with the word Eve, Chava, because she was from the mother of all the Chaya. Eve means life and living. We saw it with Seth and gift. We saw it with Cain and Cana.
Yeah.
Now, not all authors do this, but here the author in Genesis 1 through 11, and he's going to do it in the other Abrahamic narratives as well. You think of Isaac means laughter and so on and so forth. He's really drawing attention to these names.
Yeah.
And they have a lot to do with the overall meaning of the narrative. And Noah here means grace, and he means comfort or relief.
Yeah.
Now look at what Noah is going to do. Noah is going to bring us, Noah, if you will, he's going to bring us rest from our work and from the pain of our hands. If you remember back in the judgment in chapter 3, the woman was going to experience pain in conception. The man was going to experience pain because of his toil on the ground. And here Noah is going to bring us comfort, or he's going to bring us relief from the pain. So in other words, Noah's going to reverse the curse. I mean, this is really huge. And it literally basically says that, from the ground which the Lord cursed it.
Right.
So there's something about Noah, and I will just tell you that, this is going to have to be continued, because it's not Noah himself. It's the seed of Noah. It's the son of Noah. And of course, it's not going to be Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. It's not even going to be their son, Abraham. It's not even going to be his son, Isaac and Jacob and Judah. It's, of course, going to be the Lion King,
Right.
who generations later gives us David, who generations later
Yeah.
gives us Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God. So that's how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
And I want to say here that here we have, though, again, part of the gospel, that this seed of Noah is literally going to remake the ground, if you will. There's going to be a comfort from the curse on the ground. And that's what this says here. This is the hope that we have, again, in the seed of Noah. But we've got some bad news before we continue, of course, because
Noah messes up. And,
well, not only does Noah mess up, but the Lord literally brings the flood first.
That too.
Right. And then, of course, Noah's going to mess up, and Noah's sons are going to mess up. And again, Judah's going to mess up, and Israel's going to mess up. And again, it's kind of painful to watch. We have so many generations between now and the true seed of woman. But this is the hope of the gospel, and it's here already in Noah.
So if someone was to ask you about how to preach Genesis, 4 through 5 with these genealogies, how would you tell them to preach this to their congregation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Genesis 4 would be its own sermon.
Yeah.
And that would be the contrast between Cain and, again, the hope that we have in the son of Seth, Enosh, who began to call on the Lord.
Yeah.
Okay, and that we should call on the Lord and not be a Canaanite. We should, overcome our sin through Christ. And then in Genesis 5 here, we'd really have this focus right here on Noah, and perhaps Noah and Enoch.
Yeah. So in some of my preaching classes I had in seminary, they kind of discouraged from using too much of the Hebrew and the Greek words in your sermons, because you don't want to, lose the congregation, or you don't want to be too nerdy or academic and things like
right.
that. But there's a case here to be made that you literally can't really get to the point without knowing some of this Hebrew context. So is there a way to allude to the Hebrew without getting too like deep in the textual explanation of it?
Well, again, I kind of agree with you. This is not popular, and I don't want this to be elitist, but you can kind of see how important the Hebrew is here for following the breadcrumbs, so to speak, of the author.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't see these word plays and this word pain,
Mm-hmm.
right, which was in chapter 3 twice, and it's connected to the curse on the ground. So if you don't see some of these connections, it makes it much more challenging to follow the intentionality here.
Yeah.
And of course, if you would happen, now this comes across in English just fine, the breaking of the pattern.
Yeah.
But I do think it's like easier in the Hebrew because you're not trying to read through this real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be very important. And I say it's fine to use the Hebrew, but again, it's not like you're trying to look smart in any of this or any of those things. This is just necessary to follow the intention of the author. And I like to kind of show people, if I'm going to ask people to do things based on the Word of God, I like to show them the evidence.
Yeah.
And then you'll just have to decide how much Hebrew to show or to not show.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, again, integral. The language here is going to be very important as we jump into verse 6. Now, this wordplay doesn't end until verse 8, but I think I want to just save it till the next episode because we've got this challenging chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, where the sons of God come into play here. And we got all these kind of crazy questions about what are the sons of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll get to it then. But I hope that in this discussion of Noah and his reversing the curse shows you the hope that we have in the eventual son of Noah and how he's begun the reverse of the curse in his death, his sacrificial death, his life, his resurrection, his ascension, and literally the descension of the Spirit into our lives, even though the earth, right, creation is still corrupt. It hasn't been redeemed yet. So I hope from this discussion that you've seen how the Scripture is for us and about us.